Hi, this is Mr. West Ross, it's More Stylish. Today I'm in Explain Everything mode again to tell you about this immigrant specimen paper for the OCR GCSE history. You can see me there celebrating with a team of winners. Hopefully you'll be a winner after watching this and putting your targets together. Have a look at your marks, see what you've got for each question, and then see what targets you can write down to improve your standards and improve your marks. Okay, what is the message of this source? Use details of the source and your own knowledge to explain your answer for 6 marks, okay? And that's exactly what we need to do. We can see that for level 4, focus on the main message of the cartoon supported by detail from it is in there, okay? And we can see that racist opponents of immigrants are fascist and poorly educated. A man walking by identifies the slogan writers as fascist with a sarcastic comment about Hitler's birthday. Poor spelling in the slogan Britain and white shows them to be poorly educated. Okay, so Britain there is spelt wrong, white is spelt wrong, and this guy here is identifying them as fascists. Okay, while you're right, put happy returns Hitler, it's his birthday today. So clearly we've got this idea that these people are uneducated and don't really know what they're doing. Okay, I wonder if this guy's outfit, could he be a teddy boy? He does look smartly dressed. Could he be meant to be a teddy boy? He's got the 3-piece suit on there. As into the background, I can't see it clear enough to see what's what and see what's going on, but there you go. Yeah, and that's the idea. And this guy's trying to represent perhaps the British man, saying that actually these ideas are wrong. The message of the cartoon is that people who are writing this kind of thing are actually in the wrong. Okay, the actual message of the cartoon is that these people are in the wrong. They're poorly educated, but their ideas are wrong, and that's why it's taking the mick or having a satirical kind of view of it. All right. Oops. Oh, all right, it's a satirical cartoon, and that's why, because what it's actually trying to do is take the mick out of the people that are there. And then we can move on to the next bit for the top level. What is the content? Okay, the formation in 1967 of the National Front, all right, and how that was designed to try and end immigration, all right. That will be the kind of detail of the source, or anything from 1967 that kind of adds into it. To get the top marks, you need to have the message of the cartoon and the detail from it and your context. All right, so have you got all those 3? Message, detail, context. Let's put that down. And then context, which is like own knowledge, isn't it? Let's be fair. All right, they're the 3 things that you're trying to get. All right, champion. Okay, so question 2 says, which source is more useful in telling you about the feelings of immigrants in Britain? And I think what we've got here is 2 interesting sources, but one more useful than the other. Let's start off with source C, okay, which offers a very, very positive, you might say, rosy depiction of Britain. Okay, so this source is positive and very rosy. Okay, my father came to Britain in 1948, and soon afterwards I came in with her. She worked for the first time as a life outside the home in a sewing workshop with a Jewish refugee from Germany and an Irish woman. The workers there amongst her closest friends. The time was all the time in England. I used to listen to her talking with such a feeling of surprise. Never in my experience had she talked so much. She laughed a lot too. I probably never seen her so happy as in those times when her life was changing so much. And I think this is useful because our own knowledge could tell us a little bit about the situation in the West Indies, okay, which didn't offer a lot of opportunity for many people. Okay, this woman's talking about opportunity. And she says why it is that people have come to Britain, and almost she's came alive here. She's become a better person because she's been working in Britain, and I think that that's a really interesting and useful source for telling us about that. Okay, but it is very, very rosy, and that moves me on nicely to source B. Okay, now then, I quite like this source because I think it kind of offers both sides of the situation. So to me, this is a bit more useful. Okay, I was in love with Britain, and that love only grew when I came from the Caribbean in the 1950s. Okay, now we know that she would be in love with Britain because of what she'd been taught in school and in church in the West Indies, and that love only grew in the 1950s. We know that National Health Service as a midwife, many immigrants, people from the West Indies, were employed in that. She loved the clean hospitals, the efficiency and order. I hated the disorder I had left behind. So again, another reference there to life in the West Indies and how it wasn't all that and the opportunities were low and perhaps they couldn't produce a health service as good as this. But, and this is what I like best, but my feelings of pride and love were beaten down again and again by racism, ignorance and abuse. Such unfairness to us Christian people who had fought in the war with the best of them. And I think that that's what's interesting because she says what's good about Britain, but she also offers what's not so good about it. Now, okay, we know that in 1958 there was that summer of violence. Okay, and from then on, really, there's this idea of immigrants not being welcome. We've got the Rivers of Blood speech in '68. Okay, 10 years later, again this idea, and she was beaten down by racism, ignorance, and abuse. She wanted to love it here, but didn't. And I think it's the fact that it offers both sides in its analysis that makes me say that that is the more useful source. Although I do like the fact that source C mentions the positivity in Britain and stuff like that. And I guess also I like the fact that source B talks about what they'd learned in the Caribbean too. Okay, so it's a bit mixed match there. There's several good points for that. All right, and level 5 would be 8, okay, compares the usefulness of both sources by evaluating them in context and supporting them with details from both sources. That's certainly what I've done, okay. Maybe just have a quick peruse of the mark scheme there just to make sure there's nothing else to add in. Okay, how far do you trust or do you not trust this source? Okay, now it doesn't say or do you not, but that's certainly something that we want to think about. Use details of the leaflet and your own knowledge to explain your answer. So let's start off with why it is that we don't trust it. Now, first of all, this comes down to the idea of the purpose of the source, and we always need to be mentioning the purpose, all right, in a question like this. What is the purpose of this source? Okay, and I believe that the aim of the source produced by the British government, okay, in 1958 was to reduce immigration, okay. And there's several ways that they do that, okay. They mention the cold wind, which would be obviously something that India they won't be used to. All right, and the aim of it is to show that because he was not skilled, he didn't get a job. No, he did in the end, but he wouldn't get a job, all right. Only come to this country if you've got skills, and even then, think about it, all right. And it published in 1958 to try and sort of say that we only want skilled workers, and the government is worried about unrestricted immigration from India and Pakistan. All right. So the aim of the leaflet, the purpose of it, is to sort of say life is bad in Britain. Now, this means we don't trust the source because obviously it may exaggerate. All right. We know that many workers who arrived in Britain, it didn't matter if they were skilled or not, do we? All right, because they always got low-skilled jobs anyway. All right, but this source paints a picture of if you're not skilled, you're not going to get a job. But we do know that's not actually accurate or true. However, what we've got to think about then is why do we trust it? Well, and this might seem ridiculous, but it does offer. We do trust the source because of the opinion it reflects. Okay, now we know this actually to be not true, but many people in Britain believe these ideas that immigrants shouldn't be coming here and they shouldn't be taking our jobs and they wouldn't be successful. So we do trust it because, in a way, it mentions several things here to put people off, but many people in Britain wanted immigrants to be put off from coming here, and that kind of makes the source useful in that sense. So we trust it as an opinion of lots of people in Britain, but we don't trust it because of the purpose and the fact that actually it's aimed to try and stop people coming, so it exaggerates how bad life is in Britain for the unskilled worker. Okay, so the question here is, which source do you think gives a more accurate view of the reception given to immigrants? Use details of the source and your own knowledge to explain your answer. And the trick here is to do one source and then the other. So we want a paragraph on each, okay? Paragraph on each source. Yeah, definitely. That's what we want, a paragraph on each source. And then within that paragraph, what we need to think about doing is saying why it is accurate and not accurate. Yeah, that's what we need to think about. So a paragraph on each source, and within that paragraph we need to say why it's accurate and not accurate. Now, to do it. Let's start with this first source then, source E. Okay. Now then, this shows us. It's a photograph of West Indian immigrants arriving at London's Waterloo Station in December 1961. Now, I actually worry about the accuracy of this because it seems to give the impression that many immigrants arriving in Britain received a hearty and joyous welcome. However, I'm a little bit worried about that, okay, because what is the purpose, as it says here in the mark scheme, what is the purpose of this source? It says in there to promote good race relations in London in the context of the tension that had existed in 58 with the race riots in London and the Midlands. That's a really nice point. And I feel that these people are actually, what's happened there? Are actually almost like protesting. Let me get rid of that. Almost like protesting these people to say welcome to Britain, as if actually most people are not making people feel welcome. All right, why are they there protesting, or why are they there with the signs? It looks almost staged to me. But some people were very happy about immigrants coming to Britain and wanted to welcome them. But we know that was not the case for the majority, and I worry that actually this source is just taking a small example of people who felt they had to protest to get people into Britain, okay? Normally people wouldn't have this kind of banners and maybe getting handshakes and saying fair play to you for arriving, but you wouldn't have your signs up like this, as if it's almost like a protest. We're protesting because we think that people should be allowed to come to Britain, okay? Without that, you know, that's what I mean. So I think that even though these people probably did feel happy, all right, the purpose of it was to promote good race relations after the 58 riots in London. And the purpose of it was to show perhaps that this was not typical even, okay? This kind of reaction was not typical, and we know that, and therefore I worry about the accuracy. Source F is perhaps more accurate than not, in a sense. I left Pakistan, I went to Nottingham. I knew I wasn't going to get any better job than being a British railway cleaner. I'd seen qualified people from my country being teachers and barristers, and none of them got proper work. They were labourers, bus conductors, railway cleaners like me. Many times we could read and write much better than the people who were in charge of us. Okay, now we know that a lot of what he's saying here is definitely true. Oops. True. Yeah, is definitely true. A lot of what is there definitely accurately reflects the experience of many Commonwealth immigrants. Okay, is what the mark scheme says about this, and that's true, all right, that people were discriminated against because of the colour of their skin. Many people went for jobs, they didn't get them, okay, the better jobs. They simply wouldn't be offered a job because of the colour of their skin. And even with Race Relations Acts coming in, we can see that really didn't alter that kind of implicit discrimination that existed to say, well, sorry, you can't take this job. And maybe give a different reason because of that. Although we do know that many people who did come to Britain did or were successful, okay, in their lives here, and that encouraged others to arrive. So I wonder if that maybe it paints too bleak a picture, okay, and maybe that's the issue for source F, that it is in fact too one-sided to be totally accurate, all right, and then. In conclusion, let's see, which source gives a more accurate view of the reception given to immigrants? I'd have to say probably source F. It's a little too one-sided, but it's nowhere near as one-sided as the photograph in source C. Just a last point here that I've actually rubbed out, so perhaps you struggle to see, is this issue here of what it says. Hey, I'm moving it around just a second. Oh, no. Yeah. Right, there we go, got rid of it. So, is that it's actually also illustrated in source A, okay? And I like the way that's just cross-referenced it with another source in the paper, and we know that they do like to see that done. So if in doubt, get a bit of cross-referencing in, if you can. Okay, so this is a nice question, okay? Surprised by that this photograph was published in 1968. Use details of the source and the photograph and your own knowledge to explain your answer. So I think at first glance, it seems surprising. At first glance, it seems surprising because it might be a nice way to start it off and then go into it when we think more closely, it is not surprising. Okay, so that might be my structure to this. At first glance, it seems surprising because when we think more closely, it is not surprising because... And at first glance, it does seem surprising that someone will write Powell for PM on a wall, okay? Because Powell was sacked from the shadow cabinet, from his Rivers of Blood speech, and 6 years later he left politics, didn't he? Okay, and it's also surprising that a black man would walk down a street with a sign saying Powell for PM when he was so openly, obviously, against the issues of immigration. However, when we think more closely, it is not surprising because Powell spoke in areas or targeted areas where there were lots of immigration. And we know that in Birmingham, where he spoke, and in London, there was lots of immigration. It is therefore not surprising that there would be an immigrant person walking by this sign. And Powell got a huge amount of support from London dock workers, okay? They went on strike and all sorts in support of him. He had thousands and thousands and thousands of letters sent to him in support of his ideas. So it's not unsurprising that actually it says Powell for PM in London. This street may well have been near the docks where the dock workers were working, okay? And that's it. So are you surprised? Overall, I am surprised in a way that it was published, maybe. My finishing point says it was published in 1968, because obviously it would have upset or maybe incensed racism that there's a black man having to walk by that sign. But ultimately, I'm not that surprised because so many people were in support of Powell. He was said to have spoken for the silent majority, the white silent majority, and many in London, particularly dock workers, were in support of him. Okay, so this is the last question. This should always be the big dog for you to get 12 out of 12 and just smash it, okay, because it's not particularly difficult. The British welcomed immigrants in the 1950s and 60s. How far do the sources in this paper support this statement? Okay, now what I would straight away be inclined to do is to get ourselves a line there, all right, in red. Yeah, and produce a little table. Oops, let's move the whole thing. Let's try again. Produce a little table saying why sources that agree and disagree. Okay, yeah, agree and then disagree. That's how I'd tackle this question. Not a problem. Agree and disagree and just place that there. Right, and I'd look for sources that fit into there. I'd have a quick look through the booklet and probably I'd be looking for 2 or 3 for each side. And the mark scheme will say, although whether it doesn't in this specimen one, it's not down to the amount of sources that are covered, but it's the quality with which those sources are linked to the question or to the statement and are analysed, okay? Now then, to get 8 to 10, all right, you need to be saying both both sides of it. So, British welcomed immigrants, British didn't welcome immigrants, okay? To get 11 to 12, you've obviously got to conclude your answer. Okay. Love the typing. Right. Well, that's just conclude. Let me try and delete it. I can. Absolutely brilliant. Waste of time here. Conclude. Woohoo, I managed to type correctly. You need to conclude your answer. But the last bit, that's to get you into the 11 or 12 marks. Say how far. Think about there, not just the number of sources, but whether the sources are accurate. And that leads us into our last point of the day. Reliability can get you 2 marks. All right, and you're a muppet if you don't get them. All right, so if you was to get 11 out of this and you didn't use reliability, you're just kicking yourself because you should have got 12. All right, so 2 or 3 sources for each side. Do a little table at the start. What's your conclusion going to be? And maybe there you can think about reliability, and you can get up to 2 marks for reliability in the answer. Well done. Hopefully, shout out of 50. You got some big match performance marks there to get a good grade.